Alright, sorry for the delay on this one. Let's talk rhythm. So, oh, let me move this stuff. Okay, so let's talk time signature real quick. So in a time signature, there are two numbers. There's the top number and the bottom number. What the top number says is how many beats we're going to have in one measure. Alright, so let me import some media real quick. Alright, so one measure is like, between two bar lines. So I'm shading it in green. This is a measure. That's number one. Here's measure 2 in this example. Measure 3. Measure 4. Okay? So what this top number is saying, this number 4 is saying that for each one of these, there's 4 beats inside of it. Alright? Now what this bottom number says is that 4 represents a quarter note. So that means that every quarter note is going to equal 1 beat. So within one measure, if every quarter note is equal to 1 beat, and you have 4 beats in a measure, then it would take 4 quarter notes to fill a measure, right? It's pretty simple. So let's say that I changed this top number to a 6, and now we had 6/4. Well, now I need 2 more quarter notes to complete a measure. Okay, that's one complete measure. Now, using this information that we have 6 quarter notes in a measure for this example, we could also say that we could take out 2 quarter notes because, like, proportionally, 1 half note is worth 2 quarter notes, right? So if I wanted to fill this measure with all half notes, I could do 3 half notes because these are worth 2, 2, and 2, right? So we're going to go over the number system real quick on how we do countings, how we're going to be doing countings for this class. We're going to use the number system. So this also fills out the measure, right? Because it would take 2 eighth notes in order to make 1 quarter note. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 beats. Sorry. Alright, so how we draw these countings in is we do, for a held out note, we'll write the value of it. It takes up beat 1 and beat 2, and we'll draw a little tie underneath it. Okay, because it's combined beats 1 and 2. Now this is beat 3, this is beat 4, this is beat 5. When we get to eighth notes, since it's worth half a beat, for the direct middle of a beat, we put an and. 5 and 6 and. Alright, that's not too bad, right? So now, let's say that these are gone, and I'm just moving this over, so that's a 4, oops. So that's a 4, and now let's say I had this. These are 16th notes, alright? Now, 16th notes, we count them as 1 enda, 2 enda, 3 enda, 4 enda. So once again, this lies on beat 3, so our first one's going to be 3. Now the direct middle of the beat would be the and, so here's the direct middle. And now what goes in between the front and the middle is going to be the E. And what goes between the middle and the 4 of the next beat is an So 3E and Okay? So let's go over some strategies for writing in countings for measures. So we're going to work with down here. Let's say that this is 4/4. Okay. I'm going to write out 2 measures. Let's say let's take an easy measure, and let's take a slightly more complicated measure. Okay. So, writing in the counting for this, we could just use the same strategies for if we have an easy example or a more complex example. So, the first strategy is that if you have a bar line, right? The bar line is going to reset your counting. So that means that the first thing that comes after a bar line has to be number 1, because we don't start at 0. So I could write a 1 here. That's definitely a 1. This is also definitely 1. Okay, it starts on 1, but its duration we're not sure. So in the measure on our left, we know that a quarter note is equal to 1 because of this bottom number, right? So I can leave that as 1, and it takes up all of beat 1. So I know that the next thing I'm going to do is beat 2. So there's a 2 right there. Oops. Let's go with green. So there's a 2 right there. Okay? And so I start on one end, the end that you can really understand, right? So in this example on the right, maybe you don't really know the back end of it, so you start at the front because you could definitely put a 1 down. So now that you've put your 1 down, all right, review that a dot, this rhythmic dot, means that is going to add half to original value. So that dot is going to add half of the original value of that note that it's dotting. So it's dotting the quarter, so half of the quarter would be an eighth note. An eighth note plus a quarter note is equal to 1.5 beats, right? So if this takes up all of beat 1, okay, all of beat 1 and half of beat 2, see that? And then the and that comes from 2 goes on that. Alright? And now we know that this has to be 3, and it takes up its whole beat. And now 4, since it takes up the whole beat, 4 falls on the rest. Put parentheses around our rest. And this must be the second half of the 4, which is and. Alright? So the strategies, I'll lay them out for you. Strategy is starts on beat 1, do not always do the measure in order. So that means is do what you know first, right? So let's say that you know, you got a 4/4 here. Let's say this is my 4/4, and it looks like it looks a little crazy. That's supposed to be a dot. And okay, let's say it looks like that. Alright, so one thing that you could do is not work on this in order. Okay, so you'll start to see like these, if you chunk these out as like 1 beat, you know that this is worth 1 beat, because this part is a half a beat, and these are also worth half a beat. They're 1/4 of a beat each, right? Because this is a 16th note, 16th, this is an 8th, right? So you chunk this out as 1 beat. So if that takes up 1 beat, it takes up 1 whole beat, and it's the last thing in the measure, then it's gotta be beat 4. So this is 4. This is the long one, so that means that the half is here, right? Halfway between the beat is on the and this is the right? The beginning, you can recognize this as a grouping of 16th notes as well, right here. And you could do 1. Notice that the E and the and are in the center here, are both in rest. That's an Then your middle is your dot, which we went over before. 2 and 3, and your and is right there. And then you got 4. Sorry, this is all like I kind of messed up the colors here. 2 and 3. Here's the end. Okay. Now, so start on either end. It's really difficult to start in the middle. See this 2, like I couldn't have figured out the 2 and 3 and part if I didn't first figure out this beginning part. Because it would, if I figure out this section, then I know where I leave off for the middle section. And if I do the last section, then I could go backwards from there. Right? So do the parts that you know first. Parts that are going to be easier. So, where is my list at? Here it is. Okay, so do things you know. If there's something that you like really, really don't know, the answer is subdivide. That's pretty simple. So when I subdivide, this is going to need a new page. Subdivide is very important. Subdivide. When we subdivide, what we're doing is we are writing out the smallest note that you have in that measure for the entire measure. Now, what the heck does that mean? So let's go back here. I'll erase this page. Alright, so let's go with 4, 4 again, and let's pretend that you have no idea what the dot means, and that maybe this is super complicated, or maybe this actually is super complicated for you right now, and that's fine. We're going to make it through this together. Okay, so check out that measure. It's a little funky. So let's say, well, I have no idea what I'm doing because I don't know what a dot is in the front, so I can't do the front end of this. And what the heck is this? This is a quarter note followed by a single eighth note. That doesn't make any sense to me. I can't do that either. And I sure as heck can't start in the middle. So I can't start in the beginning, can't start at the end, can't start in the middle. I literally can't do anything. So what you're going to want to do here is you're going to want to subdivide. So what subdividing is, I said that you're going to take your smallest, right? Let's write that out real quick. You're going to take the smallest value fill a measure with it. Okay? So what you're going to do here is you're going to fill out an entire measure with it. So underneath, right, you basically using this subdivision as guidelines. So our smallest value is an eighth note in here, right? That's the smallest thing that we have in here. There are no 16th notes in here, just an eighth note. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill out a bunch of eighth notes underneath. It helps if you try to like line things up a little bit, but if you can't, then you can't, right? So this would be a full measure of eighth notes in 4/4 time, right? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and I'm going to write that underneath it. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? So you know, you use this as a template for what is going on up top in the measure that you don't understand. So all you got to do now is play the matching game. So after you've subdivided, check out this. Let's go with the 4 and in the bottom. See, now you can start your beginning and end because see this here, this here. This is kind of tough to start with if you don't. This one right here. Oops. This one is kind of tough to start with if you don't know what a dot is, right? So let's start on the end here. And I see that I have an eighth note here and I have an eighth note here. So they actually line up perfectly because they're both the last things in the measure, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my and from here, move it up there. So there's my and, right? And now I can kind of cross this guy out. I can't use him anymore. I already used him up. Okay? And I'm done there. So now I have a quarter note. The quarter note it comes before that eighth note. And I know a quarter note is worth 2 eighth notes. So what I'm going to do is these two guys, this one here, Let me do that in a different color. So this one here plus this one here, they fit into him there, right? So what I have is and 4, and I can, oops, that's a little sloppy. I could draw the little tie underneath that, right? And now I cross these out because I use them. So now my 8th note here on beat 3, that lines up with an 8th note that's in the top, correct? Right here. No problem. So now let me take that guy, and we're going to cross him out, and we'll put his 3 up top. 3. Okay? So I've noticed that I've used the last 4 8th notes in the measure, and that means that I've already finished the second half of the measure. Okay? So all I have left here, I can't use any of these in here anymore. These are gone. I already used them. And so now all I have is the dot and the 8th note. So if you had no idea what a dot is, you could potentially finish this measure. So all you got to do is keep working backwards, because you start from the things that you know, right? And what I know is I know that an 8th note is equal to an 8th note, right? So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 8th note from the end, and I'm going to write the counting up there for it. So this 8th note matches with this 8th note, so that gets the and then I can no longer use this guy. So now, process of elimination, all I have left is the dotted quarter. So these 3 8th notes in here must be worth a dotted quarter. And if you actually knew the definition of your dot, then you know that the dot adds half the value on. So that would be 1.5 beats. 1.5 beats is equal to 3 8th notes. So now you're just going to move your counting up here. 1 and 2. Alright? So I know this has been a super long video. Probably the beginning of this might not help you if you know, you're looking for more advanced counting. But the end of this video on subdivision, that is that's worthwhile. So check out this video. I don't need to be saying that because you're already watching the video if you're hearing this. So but anyway, so hopefully this helps. And what you're going to do is you're going to take these strategies that I showed you, and you're going to apply them to your more complex rhythms, right? It's not really about how to solve for a dotted quarter 8th, you know, scenario. It's more about the process here that I'm taking. All right. So with that process, you subdivide. After you subdivide, and you fill out the measure. You take the smallest value, fill out the measure for subdivide. And then what you're going to do is the last thing that we did here was we played the matching game. Okay? You just match them up. Start from where you know, match them up. Alright, anyway, let me know if this helps or if it doesn't help, and then I can make a better video for you. Alright, see ya.